Hundreds of sharpened number 2 pencils, sealed packets, and scantrons can only mean one thing. That is, the 7 months of teaching has led up to 1 week of state standardized testing in schools across America. While standardized testing is used to measure educational progress throughout the year, it has failed to do so, and in turn has made the education system a negative thing. And because of that, the systems in place need to be changed or revised. The No Child Left Behind Act has made so standardized testing is more important than teaching itself, and we need to help schools adopt new ways so that students can learn again and that teachers can be able to teach without having to worry about getting high scores at the end of the year, and instead be more concerned with the students' growth in their education. In order to better understand why standardized testing is a problem, I think it's important to know about the No Child Left Behind Act. It was an act in place in the early 2002, and its intent was to bridge the gap between students in the educational system of the U.S. as well as internationally. And Education Week wrote an article, No Child Left Behind, which is an overview, about requirements and criticisms of this. Some of the requirements, as the article states, is that its intent was each student to have a proficient level of learning in both math and English by the year of 2014. And each state was allowed to make up what they thought that proficiency level was, but each school was tracked yearly by adequate yearly progress, or AYPs, and if they missed some of those, then they suffered some consequences that could be up to students being able to transfer different schools within that district, all the way up to schools being closed by the state or made into private charter schools. Also, the article states that the schools were given Title I money to fund the program, and if you missed an AYP, then some of that money was taken and set aside for tutoring and school choice instead of the education aspect of the schooling. So there's 3 major criticisms with this act. One is that it didn't actually help education at all, and actually, in fact, by 2015, no state had 100% proficiency level within their students. Second is that it was poorly funded as an act, which then means that our schools are also poorly funded. And lastly, what I'm choosing to focus on is that it put too much emphasis on standardized testing. So even though the No Child Left Behind Act looks good on paper to help diminish that gap of students in their education, in reality, it failed and fell short. And now our educational system is in shambles, and its main problem is due to overemphasis on standardized testing. Educational psychologists put a study called Standardized Testing and School Accountability by Dylan William, and a couple of his main points were that standardized tests were a good thing in holding teachers and students accountable for what they learned throughout the year, but where it failed is that it now made teachers in a high risk situation, which means that if they didn't meet certain standards, then they were criticized and held accountable for them. A Saturday Evening Post by Stephen Sloan, which is an interview with Sir Ken Robinson about teaching environment, and Robinson states, in principle, testing is a logical way to monitor progress, but in practice, it creates a dry learning environment. And honestly, who can blame teachers for having a dry learning environment when they're forced to do certain things because of standardized tests? In 2001, Testing in Schools, an article by Kenneth Jost, states that many educators say the emphasis on testing forces them to spend too much time on test preparation at the expense of important learning. So standardized testing has now basically backed teachers into a corner and made them choose between a curriculum that could potentially higher their scores and keep them out of trouble, or one that could flourish kids' learning process and creativity. having gone through standardized testing and seeing how much more specific it's gotten in schools, it's led me to think that this does need to change, and it needs to change now. And one of the ways it can help change is that America needs to make education a priority again. And I think by doing that, or by making better teacher training, it's a way of doing that. And out of personal experience, my senior year in high school, not really understanding grammar or really liking English class at all, my English teacher gave us a packet the first day of common grammatical terms and the correct ways to use them. And it just made me realize that this is the way schools should be taught. A teacher who saw a problem because of us just being passed along the line, expecting to have known it, and then took the time to actually teach us, even if we were a senior in high school, finally learning about grammar. So Sloan in his interview states that none of the top performing foreign school systems rely on standardized testing. In fact, Finland, one of the highest ranking school systems in the world, puts emphasis on creating great teachers. So it just makes me ask the question of why America is stuck on standardized testing instead of following suit and putting more emphasis on creating teachers that will be able to teach our children. Another aspect of this is increasing the level of creativity in schools and getting rid of that dry learning environment. Films on Demand showed a TED Talk from Sir Ken Robinson that says, and he says, "We sold ourselves into a fast food model of education, and it impoverishes our spirit and our energies as much as fast food is diminishing our physical bodies." Basically, that standardized testing is just doing that. It's making us all standard and is not giving us any room to budge or to focus on how kids learn or their different talents that we can meet and flourish. Robinson also states that we have to go from an industrial model of education, a manufacturing model, based on linearity, conformity, and batching people. We have to move to a model that is based more on the principles of agriculture. We have to recognize human flourishing is not a mechanical process, it's an organic process. We can't predict the outcome of human development. All you can do, like a farmer, is create conditions under which they will begin to flourish. I think one of the ways we can do this is taking the money from our standardized testing and putting it back into the arts system of schools. Another way is smaller classrooms that allow students to have more one-on-one time with teachers and encourages communication and creativity in the classroom. The No Child Left Behind Act has put us back many years in putting the emphasis on standardized testing and has taken education away from the students. And I think testing is a good way to show progress, but it shouldn't be used as a way to determine how kids are taught. So I'd encourage you, for those of you in school or have children in school, to not settle for our fast food way of education, but to promote better teacher training and a more organic way of learning through small classes and help funding the arts to make it so our education system is better off. Thank you.